Hello there, Drew Hanish, and welcome to another Tasting Tuesday. It's a 2 for Tuesday, actually, 2 videos today, both featuring a Jack Daniel's single barrel. Talked a little bit about the banana note in the whiskey, and in this episode I'm going to be talking about chill filtering, while also doing a tasting of Jack Daniel's single barrel and Four Roses small batch select. And that is one of the things that, if you look at this is not a traditional bottle, by the way. Thank you to the distillery for sending this out to me. You'll notice there that it says, clear as day, non-chill filtered. So I'm going to do a tasting on these two, and then we're going to talk a little bit about this chill filtering controversy that is raging right now. And I say raging, okay, there's bigger political issues going on that truly are raging right now, but chill filtering is a mystery to a lot of people. There's a lot of opinions about it. You can say, I don't care if my whiskey is chill filtered to someone, and you're going to get all sorts of reactions. You may just get a, oh yeah, whatever that means, to, oh man, chill filtering just destroys a whiskey. I mean, why would you do that? And the debate is actually going on in a series of videos that have been done by a YouTuber named Ralfy, who has been doing tasting videos from the Isle of Man for over 10 years. And this guy has a very delicate palate. He can pick out flavors. I mean, I guess after you've been tasting whiskeys as long as he has, you can find a lot of very unique flavors. And he's been very concerned about a recent change at the GlenDronach distillery, where they are moving from this little statement at the bottom that says non-chill filtered to now removing that. If you go to Scotland, as I understand it, and you find a bottle of GlenDronach, it does not say that on there anymore. Me, I got a little paranoid about it. I got FOMO. I jumped out to the liquor store and I'm like, oh, I gotta see. And when I got out there, I saw a couple of bottles that had it on it, still said it, so I bought them as quick as possible. Because chill filtration does matter to me, and I'm gonna get into what chill filtration is, and I'm gonna get into maybe a way, first of all, how this evolved for GlenDronach, and also, maybe a way that they can continue to chill filter and fight off some of the negatives, because there are people who don't know anything about chill filtration, but they'll look at their whiskey and think there's something wrong with it if it hasn't been chill filtered. And so I'm going to jump into all of that. But the first thing I want to do is do a tasting of this Brown-Forman, see the connection, Brown-Forman whiskey, Jack Daniel's. This is one I picked up while I was in Nashville. It was a special bottling and 47% alcohol. So this is not the single barrel proof, but just the more mellowed out, proof down version. And I'm going to do tasting on that first, and then we'll do the Four Roses right after. The alcohol does burn the nostrils just a bit. It's hard to take a big, quick breath of this in. But it doesn't get in the way of the smell. And so you get a little oak, and you get a little of that banana in there. Banana nut bread, as I like to say. The banana's still there on the palate. Vanilla, a little bit of char comes through. It's almost like a nice little toasted thing that happens as you get towards the end. I get a hint of Fritos. I get a little bit of that corn chip kind of thing going on towards the end. It is peppery, some oak, a bit of grain in there. The Jack Daniel's is a whiskey that has really moved up on my list. It's very different. I call it a bourbon alternative. And, you know, sometimes whiskeys will get a reputation. I mean, Jack Daniel's been around for a long time. It's had its time near the bottom shelf. It has elevated itself at times. You have your Sinatra Selects and the rest in the fancy bottles and so on and so forth. But to me, I mean, it deserves a spot in your whiskey cabinet because, and maybe not old number 7, go a little higher proof than that. Go for the high proof if you want to, but yeah, I've become a fan of Jack Daniel's over time. So I get black tea here a lot in the, I'm tasting that a lot more. It's like that flavor lingers at the end. I have to figure out where that comes from. All right, so now this is Tennessee whiskey. It is maple charcoal filtered. One time, Gentleman Jack is filtered twice. And so that is what makes it a Tennessee whiskey. Going north, Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. Oh man. There's a little bit of spice in there. It's really the vanilla and the oak that stand out on this one. Maybe a little bit of fruit. And the alcohol is a little strong on this, 52%. So, and again, I get that little tickling of the nose hairs. Yeah, the oak's a little stronger there. Oh man, the berries come out. Some spice in there, maybe a little clove, pepper. Oh, but it's milky. It is. It's got a very nice texture to it. A little pepper heat on the finish. I won't say the fruit really lingers or anything. Yeah, the finish is clean, but it's like those things that you catch up front. The winning part of this whiskey is right when it's on your palate and it's rolling around in your mouth. It is just a wonderful feel to that whiskey, and lots of little flavors to explore as you get into it. So let's talk about chill filtration and what it is and why it could be good or bad for a whiskey. Because there are benefits to chill filtering and there are some drawbacks to chill filtering. Now, when I went to Four Roses, I was sitting down with Al Young and I got a chance to taste a bunch of different whiskeys. And one of the whiskeys that he let me taste was, and it had just come out, this small batch select. And he apologized to me. You're going, why would somebody apologize for their whiskey? He apologized because there was sediment at the bottom of the bottle. And he said, you know, this isn't chill filtered, so some of that stuff gets through, the little fine particles that are left in the whiskey. And I thought, you don't have to apologize to me. I love the fact that this is unchill filtered. In fact, I recognized it as soon as I saw the bottle and I went, wow, a bourbon that is unchill filtered. This is great because, Scotch people know it. They've seen it, they've heard it, unchill filtered, because chill filtering is something that has been happening in Scotch for a long time and they are moving away from it. They're also moving away from adding colorant to try to make Scotch look more like bourbon so that bourbon drinkers will buy it. which I think is great because I want to know what the natural color of a whiskey is. And if we can drink red wine and we can drink white wine, why can't we drink, a medium colored bourbon versus a light colored scotch, if that's the case. So this is just education over time as you get more in and you don't just drink bourbon, but you move over and you start drinking other types of whiskey from all over the world. You start realizing some of these differences that go into these particular whiskeys. And for me, unchill filtered, great. Let's do more of that. Let's do as much of that as we possibly can. Well, in 2019, there weren't a lot of people doing it. I think Jim Beam was doing it with their Distiller's Cut. They're now doing it with Old Tub, which was a re-release of an old brand name of theirs from pre-Prohibition. And I love that they did that because they put it out mass-produced, unchill filtered, big letters across the front. A great way to see whether a bourbon audience will accept unchill filtered whiskey or not, and really introduce them to that concept. To me, that is education. That is getting people to see something clearly on a label that they either have to go look up or that you have an opportunity now when you're doing tastings with people to talk about. So your brand ambassador should be promoting what unchill filtered is and what that means for the whiskey. So if you don't know what chill filtering is, basically what they're doing is, as we say, they have that sediment that's showing up in the bottom of a bottle of whiskey. The way to stop that is to, before you put it in the bottle, you're going to put it into a container. You're going to lower the temperature. You can get that temperature down to a point where it's the whiskey becomes thicker because you're not trying to freeze it, but you're trying to get all these other little fatty acids and oils to kind of thicken up, and to get and to get really these filtered pieces, I guess, a little bit more firm. So as you run it through the filter, it's easier for the filter to catch those bits of junk, I guess you could call it, in your bottle. But you also may be collecting some of those fatty acids and some of the esters from the whiskey. And this is where people who don't like chill filtering have a beef, because they'll say a unchill filtered whiskey is better in mouthfeel, it's better in taste, and better in aroma. Now, a lot of debate about that. My belief is that there are many ways that you can affect the mouthfeel of a whiskey beyond just chill filtering. If you go to GlenMorangie, it's a very light whiskey in character, but they run it through these big swan neck stills, pot stills. And so it's very hard for those oils to climb to the top and get out into the next stage of whiskey production. Aging could have something to do with it. There's a lot of different things that can, fermentation time, all of these things can have an effect on the flavor and the character of the whiskey. But the reason why I am a fan of non-chill filtering is that why take away from the character of the whiskey if you don't have to? So why do they chill filter? Well, the reason they chill filter is sort of the same as the adding of color. They want the whiskey to look nice. And what will happen is, if you don't chill filter and you bottle that whiskey under 46%, which a lot of Scotch whiskeys are, then what will happen is you'll get what's called Scotch Mist in that particular case. If you add water, you add a little bit of water to it, and all of a sudden, what's going to happen is you're going to start getting a little bit of cloudiness in your whiskey. Or if you add some ice cubes, the whiskey's going to become cloudy. And the fear is that somebody's going to say, there's something wrong with my whiskey, and would you please, take this bottle back because, it's getting cloudy, so it must not be good. Or if you bought a bottle of Four Roses single barrel select and it had sediment in the bottom, you might go, is that dangerous? Should I be drinking this? Look, it's been sitting in that for a long time, so it's not going to hurt you. So it's education. It's understanding that cloudy in your whiskey is not a problem. There's nothing wrong with your whiskey. But a lot of distilleries, the bigger ones especially, probably don't feel that they have the time to explain that to the casual whiskey fan, to the person not like you and me, the person who just goes and buys a bottle of whiskey and wants it to get drunk, or wants it for something to sit around the house, or whatever, for whenever they have a party, whatever it may be, versus those people who actually sit down, taste the whiskey, don't even want to put an ice cube in it because they want to understand what it's like before the ice hits it, and maybe add just a couple drops of water to open it up. We're not the normal whiskey consumer, and so it's really more trying to hit the mass market when you're chill filtering, rather than to hit the person who is really going to sit down and spend some time with that whiskey and get to know it. So the thing is that when Ralfy got upset about this, the YouTuber, he got into a little back and forth with the GlenDronach distillery. And I completely understand where he's coming from. In fact, when I saw the title of his video about GlenDronach now chill filtering, I was actually drawn to that video and a bit upset myself, because I thought the whole reason I went to GlenDronach instead of Macallan is because Macallan is mass produced. It's a really good whiskey, and there's a lot of varieties of it. But I sometimes tend to root for the underdog. And so when I went to the store and looked for Macallan, and then I saw GlenDronach sitting next to it, and I started reading the tasting notes, and I'm like, oh, sherry cask influence, and wow, this is really nice packaging and non-chill filtered. Oh, that's interesting. So I went ahead, and it was cheaper, and so I bought it. I went home with it, and I fell in love with it, and it became an instant favorite of mine. And to this day, if people ask me what my favorite Speyside / Highland whiskey is, I tell them that I love GlenDronach, and actually used to be a big fan of the 15. My palate now is starting to appreciate the 12 a whole lot more, and so is my pocketbook, actually. But I had a bad case of FOMO when I found out and watched that video about them chill filtering, and I ran right down to the store and checked to see whether they had taken the words chill filtered off like they had in Scotland, and I found bottles that still said non-chill filtered. So I went ahead and bought 2 more, even though I still have a bottle that I'm working on in the cabinet, because if they do start chill filtering, I'm not going to be happy about it. You say, why are they chill filtering? Why would they all of a sudden start chill filtering this product? And I think it comes down to the fact that they were purchased by Brown-Forman, the company that makes Jack Daniels. And when you're a company like Brown-Forman and you buy a distillery that has a great reputation, what you want to do is you want to make that, make some profit off of that and sell it to a lot more people. And one of the things they may have not really realized when they took the non-chill filtered off of the packaging is that a lot of people that drink GlenDronach drink it exactly for that reason. Because Macallan, as far as I know, it's chill filtered, whereas GlenDronach is not. And so that's going to draw me to drinking GlenDronach. That is a differentiator that is going to send me into GlenDronach's corner. And once sold, I was in. So Brown-Forman comes in, and this is the conversation between, they've gotten a letter writing campaign back and forth with Ralfy. And they were basically saying they weren't necessarily going to start chill filtering, but they wanted to take the wording off so that they could be flexible in case they needed to. Now, from a standpoint of coloring, they're never probably going to color this whiskey. And the reason they're not going to color it is because it's been aged in sherry casks, which is going to impart a darker color on it. So there's really no fear by them taking off, natural color, that they're probably going to start adding any coloration to this. But the chill filtering is probably going to happen sooner or later. We just won't know. We won't know if and when it starts happening, unless you have a really delicate palate like Ralfy, or I start drinking it and it's thinner. And then I start to realize that chill filtering does have an effect. Now you may be saying, all right, Ralfy, you're just overreacting. Why are you so frustrated about this? Well, let me give you a analogy that is the opposite of my experience with what's going on with GlenDronach. Okay, GlenDronach, I went to the distillery. They had a American flag flying over it. I'm in Scotland, and I see an American flag over the top of a Scotch distillery, and I'm like, what is the deal with that? That's when I first learned that Brown-Forman had purchased them. And so that was weird, but I could kind of get past it. But then all of a sudden now they're talking about, there's a possibility that they may start chill filtering. Shoe on the other foot. Let's say that Richard Patterson's White and Mackay in Glasgow got a ton of money and went and bought Jack Daniels from Brown-Forman. And they said, now we own this really massive brand, but, we've got some changes we'd like to make. See where it says Tennessee whiskey? Well, we'd kind of like to take Tennessee off of that and just say whiskey, Jack Daniels whiskey. What's wrong with that? We'll just call it Jack Daniels whiskey, and we'll do that because we're not really sure about this charcoal mellowing idea, and we just like to be flexible and be able to say, sooner or later, maybe we'll just get rid of that charcoal mellowing because it's an extra process. It costs money, and so why would we want to continue? Not saying we're taking it away, and meanwhile, when you come to Lynchburg, you may drive up to the distillery and see a Scottish flag flying over the distillery, but no issues with that. How would you feel as a Jack Daniels fan, knowing that there's a possibility that when White Mackay comes in, that they are going to all of a sudden take Tennessee off, and maybe this isn't Tennessee whiskey anymore? Maybe it starts saying Jack Daniels Bourbon, like everybody in Scotland calls it. Or maybe where you start to see, another nation's flag flying over what you consider to be a quintessential American brand. So it's not 100% apples to apples, but it helps you understand why somebody like Ralfy would get frustrated at this idea of taking that information off of a label and companies saying they're going to be flexible about the thing. So for me, I think the better approach for GlenDronach is to leave this statement on here because it is what makes them different from Macallan. It's what, I'm going to give you the analogy of the dog and the bone. The dog's got the bone in his mouth. He walks over to a lake. He sees his reflection in the water. He sees another dog. He thinks it's another dog with the bone in his mouth. He gets excited, so he wants that dog's bone. And so he drops his bone to try to get that dog's bone, and it just falls into the water, and he has no bone whatsoever. So if you're going to have fans like me of GlenDronach who go around tell everybody I know how much I love this whiskey, and you're going to take away one of the things that I really love about this whiskey, you may lose me. You may lose me to Billy Walker, the man who made the whiskey that was inside of this tin originally, you may send me to his latest distillery where he is non-chill filtering his GlenDronach whiskey. So you end up losing me because you're trying to bring Macallan drinkers over to your GlenDronach to make some more money, and there's no guarantee that those people will ever want to leave Macallan to come over to your GlenDronach. And so I feel like it's not a great strategy, and I think the better strategy is for brand ambassadors from Brown-Forman, when they're going out and they're doing tastings with people, that they tell people what unchill filtering really means. That they explain, like I have in this video, that, you know, this idea of having a cloudy whiskey is not a bad thing. In fact, if anything, what it's doing is it's telling you that your whiskey has not been messed with prior to bottling. It's what came out of the cask. It's been filtered at normal temperatures to get as much of that sediment out of the bottle as possible. And I gotta be honest with you, I don't know how many bottles of unchill filtered GlenDronach I've had, and I have never seen a drop of sediment at the bottom of one of their bottles. So the filtering process they're doing now is good enough. So cloudiness is the only thing that they're really fighting. And if they want a different way, and I know this will cut into their profits, but if they really want to keep their whiskey from being cloudy, make it 47%. Don't make it 43%, because if you make it 47%, it won't get cloudy when somebody puts water or ice in it. That's my suggestion. You know, whatever's going to happen is going to happen, but I want American buyers to understand what Scotch buyers and Scotch enthusiasts have been experiencing for the last few years of this move to unchill filtered whiskey, because it is coming. If Jim Beam's doing it, if Four Roses is doing it, if a lot of your local craft distillers are doing it, it's going to become a norm. And so don't, Brown-Forman, say, let's go do it the old school way and switch what's working to go to a method that is starting to fade away and hopefully will fade away. Let's embrace cloudy whiskey. Let's embrace flavorful whiskey. And one of Ralfy's big things is about transparency, and let's be transparent. I love that idea. Let's say what you're doing to that whiskey on the label so that, you know, we know what we're buying and we can make the decision as to whether we want to buy Macallan or GlenDronach because it is or isn't chill filtered. Wear that little statement with pride. That's what I say. So I hope you understand a little bit more about unchill filtering versus chill filtered. And like I say, it may or may not be a make or break for you. I think it helps you, though, speak a little bit more intelligently about the subject when it comes up, to hear a little bit more about it. And you can choose a side, or you can say, well, this is a bunch of hogwash and I really don't care either way. But at least you know what chill filtering is, so that when it's brought up, you can have an opinion and you know, have your reasons, and they'll be a lot more valid because you got facts to back them up. So anyway, until next time, I tell you what, I'm going to go to Scotch next week on my next tasting video, and it is a Scotch that I found that I did not like the first time I had it, and now it may be one of my favorite Scotches. So I'm going to be doing a tasting on that, and I'll pair it up with something else coming up next week on Tasting Tuesday. Until next time, cheers and slán de bhath.